My name is Olivia Carter. I am 32 years old and I live in Virginia. I sat in the very last row of the auditorium. I made myself small. I was wearing a long trench coat over my shoulders, carefully hiding what was underneath. My father was sitting in the front row, beaming with pride for my younger sister, Sarah. She was graduating from basic training today. To them, she was the golden child. To them, I was just the failure, the daughter who messed up her marriage, the disappointment who disappeared. They didn't even know I was there. I was just a ghost to them, unseen and unwanted. The ceremony ended, and the applause roared through the hall. The drill sergeant, a strict man with a terrifying voice, walked off the stage. He was marching toward the exit, right past me. Then he stopped dead in his tracks. He looked at me. His eyes went wide. He snapped his heels together and raised his hand in a sharp, perfect salute. "Ma'am, Major Carter," he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "I didn't know you were coming." The room stopped breathing. Every head turned. I saw my father freeze. I saw Sarah's jaw drop. I stood up and let my coat fall open, revealing the medals and the rank they never knew I earned. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Olivia Carter. I am 32 years old. Before the silence, before I became a ghost in my own family, I was Olivia. And being Olivia used to mean something good. I need you to understand what it was like before the fall, so you can feel how hard I hit the ground. 10 years ago, I was the golden child. That isn't just a phrase, it was my identity. I was the trophy my father put on the shelf. My father was a man who loved success. He didn't care about feelings or happiness. He cared about winning, and for a long time, I was his way of winning. I was the one with the straight A report cards that he taped to the refrigerator. I was the one who captained the debate team. I was the one who got the full academic scholarship to the university, so he could brag to his friends at the golf club that he didn't have to pay a dime for my education. "This is Olivia," he would say, wrapping a heavy arm around my shoulder. "She's the disciplined one. She's going to run the world someday." I loved that weight on my shoulder. I thought it was love. I didn't realize it was just ownership. My younger sister, Sarah, was different. She was the wild one. She was messy. She struggled in school. She snuck out of the house to meet boys. My parents were always yelling at her, and I was always the one fixing it. I helped her with her essays. I drove her to school when she missed the bus. I was the glue that held the family image together. But then, the glue dried up. It started with my parents' divorce. It was ugly. It wasn't a sad separation. It was a war. My mother left, and my father became bitter. He felt like the world had cheated him. He became angry, cynical, and suspicious of everyone. He needed to be the victim, which meant he needed someone to blame for his misery. At the same time, my own life was falling apart. I had married a man named Mark. On the outside, Mark was perfect. He was handsome, charming, and had a great job in finance. My father loved him. They watched football together. They drank scotch together. My father saw Mark as the son he never had. But behind closed doors, Mark was a monster. He didn't hit me. He did something that takes longer to heal. He messed with my mind. He was a gambler. He drained our savings account, and when I asked about the missing money, he told me I was crazy. He told me I had spent it. He gaslighted me until I started checking my own receipts, shaking, wondering if I was losing my memory. He would look at me with cold eyes and say, "Olivia, you're being hysterical. You're imagining things, you're unstable." When I finally found the bank records that proved he was lying, I packed my bags. I left him. I was thin, exhausted, and anxious, but I was free. I went to my father's house. I thought, this is my dad. He knows I'm the responsible one. He knows I don't lie. He will protect me. I walked into the living room, shaking. My father was sitting in his armchair. "Dad," I said, "I left Mark. He's been lying to me. He lost our money." I expected a hug. I expected anger on my behalf. Instead, my father sighed. He didn't look at me. He looked at the TV. "Mark called me," my father said. My stomach dropped. "He did. He told me you were having an episode," my father said. He finally looked at me, but his eyes weren't kind. They were cold. "He told me you've been acting erratic, that you're emotional, that you couldn't handle the pressure of being a wife." "He's lying," I said, my voice cracked. "Dad, he has a gambling problem. He's manipulating you." My father stood up. He looked at me with disgust. In his eyes, he didn't see his successful daughter anymore. He saw a messy, divorced woman who was ruining his perfect picture. "Mark is a good man," my father said. "He's been very patient with you. You've always been intense, Olivia. A little too tight. Maybe he's right. Maybe you are the problem. I stood there, stunned. The man who used to brag about my intelligence was now telling me I was crazy because a charming liar told him so. Then came the court case. Mark played the victim perfectly. He told the judge I was emotionally abusive. He told the judge I was unstable. And my family, own father and sister, took his side. They didn't testify against me, but they didn't support me either. They sat in the back, and when the court adjourned, they went to lunch with him. I walked out of that courthouse alone. My father had rewritten history. In his mind, the golden child had died. I was now the villain. I was the unstable, bitter ex-wife who had ruined a perfectly good marriage. He needed a story to explain why his life was messy, and my daughter is crazy was an easier story to tell than I am a bad father. That was the beginning of the end. But I didn't know yet how bad it would get. You might think the courtroom was the worst part. It wasn't. The courtroom was just paperwork. The real pain came in the silence that followed. After the divorce, I moved into a small, dark apartment on the edge of town. It was all I could afford. Mark had destroyed my credit, and my father refused to help. "I'm not enabling your mistakes," he said. I tried to reach out to my sister, Sarah. We used to be close. I used to brush her hair. I used to buy her ice cream when she was sad. I thought, surely Sarah knows the truth. Surely she knows I'm not crazy. I sent her a text. "Hey, it's been a rough week. Can I come over?" I watched the 3 little dots appear, then disappear. No answer. 2 days later, I tried again. "Sarah, please, I just need to talk to someone." Finally, a response came. It was short. It was clinical. "Dad says it's better if we give you space. He says you need to work on yourself before you bring your drama around us." Drama. My pain was drama. My abuse was drama. The silence grew. My phone stopped ringing. My father stopped inviting me to Sunday dinners. When I called him, it went straight to voicemail. But while they weren't talking to me, they were definitely talking about me. I lived in a medium-sized town. Rumors move faster than light here. I would walk into the grocery store and see people I had known since kindergarten. They would look at me, then look away. Or worse, they would give me that sad, pitying smile. One afternoon, I ran into Jessica, a woman who used to be my best friend in high school. I was buying canned soup because it was cheap. "Oh, Olivia," she said, cornering me in the pasta aisle. She put a hand on my arm. Her nails were perfectly manicured. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I said, pulling back. "I saw your dad at the club," she whispered. "He told my mom about your breakdown. He said you just snapped. That the divorce broke your mind." My face burned. My hands started to shake. "I didn't have a breakdown, Jessica," I said. "I left an abusive husband." Jessica took a step back. She looked at me like I was dangerous. "Right," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Of course, whatever you say, sweetie, just take care of yourself." She walked away fast. She didn't believe me. My father's voice was louder than mine. He was the respected businessman. I was the crazy ex-wife. He had poisoned the water, and now everyone was drinking it. But the final blow, the one that actually shattered my heart, happened 3 months later. It was a Friday night. I was sitting on the floor of my empty living room, eating toast for dinner. I opened social media on my phone. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to hurt myself. I saw a notification from my cousin. New photo album. Mark and Emily's engagement party. Mark was getting remarried. Already, I clicked on the album. My heart was hammering in my chest. The party was at a fancy steakhouse. There were balloons. There was expensive wine. I scrolled through the photos. Picture 1, the happy couple. Picture 2, the cake. Picture 3, I dropped the phone. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. In the photo, my father was standing next to Mark. My father was holding a glass of champagne high in the air. He was laughing. His other hand was resting warmly on Mark's shoulder. He looked proud. He looked happy, and next to them was Sarah. She was hugging Mark's new fiancé. They were cheek to cheek, smiling for the camera. My family was at my abuser's engagement party. They weren't just neutral. They hadn't just stayed out of it. They had chosen a side. They had chosen him. They were celebrating the man who had stolen my money. They were toasting the man who had lied about me in court. They were hugging the man who had tormented me. I felt a physical pain in my chest, sharp and cold. It wasn't just sadness. It was the feeling of being completely erased. To them, I wasn't just a disappointment. I was nothing. I was replaceable. They liked Mark better. They preferred the liar because he made them feel important, while I only made them feel complicated. I zoomed in on my father's face in the photo. He didn't look like a man who missed his daughter. He looked relieved. He had a new son now. He had a new, perfect family picture, and I had been cropped out. "They hate me," I whispered to the empty room. And for the first time, I realized it was true. They didn't love me. Maybe they never really did. They only loved what I could do for them. And now that I couldn't be their trophy, they threw me in the trash and celebrated with the man who put me there. I sat in that dark apartment for hours. The sun went down, and the streetlights came on outside, casting long, orange shadows across my floor. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned. For the last 6 months, I had been living on hope. It was a small, pathetic kind of hope. I had been hoping that my dad would call and say, "I'm sorry, Olivia. I made a mistake." I had been hoping Sarah would knock on my door and say, "I miss my big sister." I had been hoping that if I just stayed quiet, if I just behaved, they would eventually let me back in. I realized that night that hope is dangerous. Hope keeps you waiting by the phone. Hope keeps you trying to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Hope makes you weak. It keeps you begging for scraps of affection from people who are starving you on purpose. "Hope is the luxury of the naive," I said aloud. My voice sounded strange in the quiet room. I wasn't naive anymore. Looking at my father's smiling face next to Mark, something inside me snapped. But it wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. I stood up. My legs were stiff. I walked to the kitchen sink and poured a glass of water. I drank it slowly. I felt calm. It was a cold, hard calmness. I picked up my phone. I opened my contacts. I scrolled to Dad. I didn't call him to scream. I didn't send a text asking how could you. I knew the answer. He did it because he wanted to. I pressed block caller. I scrolled to Sarah. Block caller. I scrolled to the cousins who had liked the photos. Block caller. Then I went to my social media accounts. I deactivated everything. I deleted the apps. It felt like I was cutting off a limb. It hurt. These were the people who were supposed to be my safety net. But I realized they weren't a net. They were an anchor, and they were dragging me down. I walked into the bathroom and looked in the mirror. I looked terrible. My eyes were red. My skin was pale. I looked like the victim they said I was. "No more," I told my reflection. "You are done waiting," I said. "You are done explaining. You are done hoping." I made a vow to myself right there in the harsh bathroom light. I would disappear. I would become the ghost they treated me like. I wouldn't argue with their lies anymore. If they wanted to tell the world I was broken, let them. If they wanted to say I was a failure, let them. I would trade hope for discipline. I would trade words for actions. I decided that I wouldn't let them see me again until I was so powerful, so undeniable, that they wouldn't be able to look away. I wouldn't speak to them until my success spoke for me. I turned off the bathroom light. I went to bed. The apartment was silent, but for the first time in a long time it didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. I was alone, but I was safe from them. I closed my eyes and started to plan. The next 4 years were the hardest and the best years of my life. I became a ghost. To my family and the town, Olivia Carter had vanished. I heard the echoes of their gossip, of course. Small towns are like echo chambers. They said I was working odd jobs. They said I was depressed. They said I was living in squalor. My father told his friends, "It's a tragedy, really. She had so much potential, but she just gave up. She's drifting." Drifting, that's what they thought. While they were at parties, while they were gossiping, I was grinding. I went back to school. I had always been good with patterns, with logic. I enrolled in an accelerated master's program for cybersecurity. I didn't tell a soul. I lived like a monk. I ate rice and beans because it cost 50 cents a meal. I studied from 5 a.m. until midnight. I didn't date. I didn't go to movies. I didn't take vacations. I channeled every ounce of my rage into my work. Every time I wanted to cry, I wrote code. Every time I remembered my father's betrayal, I learned a new encryption protocol. I graduated at the top of my class. I didn't walk the stage, I just had the diploma mailed to a P.O. box. Then I did something they never would have expected. I joined the army. I was 28 years old. I was older than the other recruits. Basic training was hell. My body ached every single day. I had blisters on my feet and bruises on my shoulders. The drill sergeants screamed in my face. They called me weak. They tried to break me. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. They didn't know that my own father had said worse things to me over Sunday dinner than they could ever scream on a parade ground. I didn't break. I got stronger. I realized that the military made sense to me. It was fair. If you worked hard, you got promoted. If you did your job, you got respect. It was the opposite of my family. I went to officer candidate school. I commissioned as a second lieutenant. Because of my degree and my skills, I was funneled into military intelligence and cyber warfare. My life became a split screen. On one side was the lie my family believed. In their minds, Olivia was a sad, lonely loser. On the other side was the reality. I was Lieutenant Carter, then Captain Carter. Then, in record time, Major Carter. I was working in a windowless facility in Virginia. I was leading teams of brilliant analysts. We were stopping hackers from taking down power grids. We were tracking terrorists across the dark web. I had a security clearance higher than most politicians. I had generals asking for my advice. I bought a beautiful condo. It was clean, modern, and safe. I filled it with books. I had a life. I had friends who respected me, not for my dad's money, but for my own brain. And my family knew absolutely none of it. I never posted a photo in my uniform. I never updated my job on LinkedIn. Sometimes, late at night, I would be tempted. I would imagine driving to my father's house in my dress blues, parking in his driveway, and shoving my rank in his face. I wanted to see him choke on his words, but I always stopped myself. Not yet, I would think. If I tell them, they will try to claim it. My father would twist it. He would say, see, I was hard on her to make her tough. This is my victory. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. My silence was my power. My success was a secret garden and I had locked the gate. I was content to let them think I was a failure forever. But then, the email came. It was a blast email from an aunt who hadn't realized I blocked everyone else. Subject: Sarah's graduation from basic training. I opened it. My little sister, Sarah, had joined the army. She had finally done something with her life. The email was full of my father's boasting. So proud of my warrior daughter. Sarah is the toughest Carter of them all. Come watch her graduate at Fort Jackson. I stared at the screen. The toughest Carter. He had no idea. He had no idea that the real tough Carter was already a major. He had no idea that while Sarah was learning how to march, I was commanding operations that saved lives. I looked at the date. It was next Thursday. I looked at my reflection in the black screen of my computer. I saw a woman who was tired of hiding. I realized I didn't want to hide anymore. I didn't want to tell them. I wanted to show them. I picked up my secure phone. I dialed the base commander's office at Fort Jackson. This is Major Olivia Carter, I said. My voice was steady. I will be attending the graduation ceremony on Thursday. Please add me to the VIP list, but keep it quiet. I want to sit in the back. Yes, ma'am, the voice said. We will expect you. I hung up the phone. A cold smile touched my lips. It was time to go home. It was time to let the truth walk in on its own two legs. It was time to meet the ghosts. The morning of the graduation ceremony broke with a sky the color of a bruised plum. It was gray, heavy, and cold. It matched exactly how I felt inside. I woke up at 4 o'clock hours. My internal clock was set to military time now. The old Olivia, the one who used to sleep in and dread the day, was gone. I rolled out of the hotel bed and hit the floor for push-ups. 1, 2, 3. The physical pain grounded me. It reminded me that I was real. It reminded me that I had built a new body and a new life that my family knew nothing about. I took a long, hot shower. I scrubbed my skin until it was pink. I was washing away the nerves. I wasn't afraid of them anymore, I knew that, but my body still remembered the trauma. My heart rate was slightly elevated. It's a physical reaction to being near the people who hurt you, like a hand instinctively pulling back from a hot stove. Then the ritual began. I opened the heavy garment bag hanging on the closet door. The zipper made a sharp zzzzzzp sound in the quiet room. Inside was my armor. It wasn't a suit of metal. It was the Army service uniform, the dress blues. I dressed slowly, treating every movement like a ceremony. First, the shirt. It was white, crisp, and starched so stiff it could stand up on its own. I buttoned it to the neck. Then the black tie, centered perfectly. Then the pants with the gold stripe running down the leg, the stripe of an officer. Finally, the jacket. It was dark blue, tailored to fit me perfectly. I slipped my arms into the sleeves. It felt heavy. It felt like protection. I buttoned the gold buttons. Then came the history. I stood in front of the mirror and picked up my rack of ribbons and medals. I held them in my hand for a moment. They felt cold and dense. Each tiny strip of colored fabric represented a month of my life, a crisis averted, a sacrifice made. There was the Meritorious Service Medal for the operation in Eastern Europe. There was the Commendation Medal for rewriting the encryption protocols that protected the Pentagon's logistical servers. There were the campaign ribbons. I pinned them to my chest. They sat perfectly straight on the left side, over my heart. Then the most important part, the rank. I picked up the gold oak leaves, Major. I pinned one on each shoulder. They caught the weak light from the hotel lamp and gleamed. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror. I didn't see the emotional wreck my father talked about. I didn't see the failed wife Mark had lied about in court. I saw Major Carter. I saw a woman who commanded respect from generals. I saw a woman who held secrets that could topple governments. You are not a ghost, I told my reflection. You are the reality check. I put on a long, black civilian trench coat over my uniform. It covered everything. It hid the gold stripe. It hid the medals. It hid the rank. With the coat buttoned up to my chin, I just looked like a normal woman in a winter coat. I looked like Olivia, the disappointment. That was the plan. I wanted to walk in as the person they thought I was. I wanted to see them look at me with pity one last time before I showed them the truth. I drove to the base in a rental car. The radio was off. The silence was my fuel. When I reached the main gate of the military base, there was a line of cars. Families were arguing over directions, showing their driver's licenses to the guards. When it was my turn, I rolled down the window. The young MP military police looked bored. He was probably 19 years old. ID please, he mumbled, barely looking at me. I handed him my CAC Common Access card, my military ID. He took it lazily. Then he looked at the rank printed next to my photo. MAJ, he froze. His eyes snapped up to mine. He looked at the civilian coat, then back at the ID. He realized who was sitting in this cheap rental car. He straightened up so fast he almost dropped the card. He stepped back, snapped his heels together, and threw a crisp salute. My apologies, ma'am, he shouted. I didn't realize. Please go right ahead, Major Carter. Thank you, Corporal, I said. My voice was calm. I drove through the gate. A small smile touched my lips. That was the first test. The rank worked. The truth worked. My family was inside that auditorium waiting for a show, but they had no idea the main event was just parking the car. I parked far away from the main entrance. The wind was biting. I walked toward the auditorium, my coat flapping around my ankles. I kept my head down. I slipped into the back of the massive hall just as the band started playing the national anthem. I found a seat in the very last row in the darkest corner. I made myself small. I pulled the coat tight. I scanned the crowd. Hundreds of families were there. And then I saw them. Row 1, seat 1, my father. He was sitting there like he owned the place. He was wearing his best suit, the one he wore to weddings and funerals. He was laughing loudly, slapping the back of the man next to him. Next to him was his girlfriend. And next to her were my cousins. They looked like a wall of people who had decided I wasn't good enough. I sat alone in the dark, my heart beating steady and slow against the gold buttons of my uniform. I was the bomb waiting to go off. The ceremony began. It was long and repetitive, full of speeches about honor, integrity, and sacrifice. I watched my father the whole time. He wasn't listening to the speeches. He was performing. He was checking his phone. He was looking around to see if people were watching him. He was playing the role of the proud father. It made me sick. He didn't know the first thing about sacrifice. He had sacrificed his own daughter to save his ego. Then the soldiers marched in. The doors opened and the formation entered. Left, right. The sound of hundreds of boots hitting the floor in unison was thunderous. I spotted Sarah. She was in the third row. She looked tired. Her uniform was baggy. She looked younger than I remembered. She was trying so hard to keep her face serious, but I could see she was nervous. My father stood up. He held his phone high above his head, recording a video. "That's my girl," he shouted. "That's the Carter blood." People around him smiled politely. I felt a sting in my eyes, the Carter blood. He used to say that about me when I got straight A's. Now, apparently, I didn't have the blood anymore. The ceremony dragged on. Names were called. Soldiers walked across the stage. Private Sarah Carter. My father let out a whoop that echoed off the walls. Sarah beamed. She shook the commander's hand. She looked happy. I was happy for her in a distant way. Basic training is hard. She had done something difficult. But I knew what was coming next. The ceremony ended. "Dismissed," the commander yelled. The room exploded into noise. Families rushed the floor. It was a chaotic sea of hugs, flowers, and balloons. I stood up. I didn't rush. I walked down the steps of the auditorium, moving like a shadow. I kept my coat buttoned. I walked toward the front of the room. I wanted to see them. I wanted to be close enough to see the look in their eyes when they ignored me. I got within 10 feet of them. My father was hugging Sarah. He was crying. Fake tears, maybe, or maybe real tears of pride for the child who hadn't failed him yet. "I am so proud," I heard him say. "You are the toughest person I know, Sarah. You are the only one with real grit in this family." The only one. The insult hung in the air. Sarah saw me then. She looked over her father's shoulder. Her smile faded slightly. "Olivia," she mouthed. My father turned around. He saw me standing there in my trench coat. His face fell. The joy vanished, replaced by annoyance. "You came," he said flatly. "I didn't think you could afford the flight." "I drove," I said softly. "Well," he turned back to Sarah, dismissing me instantly. "Let's get some photos, a real celebration." He turned his back on me. That was the moment, the final rejection. He had looked right at me and decided I was nothing. But the universe has a sense of humor. I saw a man cutting through the crowd. It was the senior drill sergeant. Sergeant First Class Miller. I recognized him from the program. He was a terrifying man, huge, muscular, with a shaved head and a voice that could strip paint off a wall. He had spent the last 10 weeks screaming at these recruits. He was marching toward the exit, looking angry that civilians were in his way. People parted like the Red Sea to let him through. He was walking straight toward us. My father puffed up his chest. He thought the drill sergeant was coming to congratulate him. He put on his charming smile. He extended his hand. "Sergeant," my father boomed. "I'm Sarah's father. I just want to say," the drill sergeant didn't even look at him. He walked right past my father's outstretched hand. He didn't look at Sarah. He was looking at me. He stopped 3 feet away from me. He looked at my face. He looked at my eyes. Recognition flashed across his face. The angry scowl vanished. He slammed his heels together. The sound was like a gunshot. Crack. He raised his hand in a sharp, razor-edge salute. He held it there, vibrating with intensity. "Ma'am, Major Carter," he barked. His voice was so loud it silenced the people standing nearby. "I didn't know you were on post, ma'am." The world stopped. My father's hand was still sticking out in the air, shaking nothing. Sarah's mouth fell open. The cousins stopped laughing. I looked at the drill sergeant. I didn't smile, I just nodded. "At ease, Sergeant," I said. My voice was low, calm, and authoritative. It was the voice of an officer. "Thank you, ma'am," he said, dropping the salute but remaining at the position of attention. He looked nervous. A drill sergeant never looks nervous. But he was nervous because he was talking to a superior officer. I looked at my father. He was frozen. He looked like his brain had just short-circuited. He looked at the drill sergeant, then at me, then at the drill sergeant again. "Major," my father whispered. It was a question. I reached up to the top button of my trench coat. "You seem confused, Dad," I said. I undid the first button. Then the second, then the third. I shrugged the heavy black coat off my shoulders. It slid down my arms and pooled on the floor. The lights of the auditorium hit the uniform, the dark blue fabric, the gold stripe on the pants, the rows of colorful ribbons on my chest, the shiny medals, and on my shoulders the gold oak leaves. I stood there, fully revealed. I wasn't the daughter who failed. I was the daughter who outranked every single person in the room. The silence in our circle was absolute. But around us, whispers started to spread. "Who is that? Look at the medals. She's a major, that's a high rank." My father's face went from confused to pale gray. He looked like he was going to be sick. He stared at the rank on my shoulders as if it were a hallucination. "You," he stammered. "You're in the army." "For 4 years," I said. But you were unemployed," he said, his voice rising in panic. "I told everyone you were finding yourself. I told everyone you were, struggling." "I know what you told everyone," I said. I took a step closer to him. He actually took a step back. "You told everyone I was broken because it fit your narrative. You needed me to be the failure so you could feel like the victim." Sarah stepped forward. She touched the sleeve of my uniform. She looked terrified. "Olivia," she said. "You're a major, that takes years. How did you do this without us knowing?" I looked at my sister. "It was easy," I said. "You never asked, not once. You stopped calling, you stopped caring." "Silence is a great place to work, Sarah." Drill Sergeant Miller was still standing there. He sensed the tension. He was a smart man. He realized he had just walked into a family war zone. But he decided to drop one more bomb before he left. "Major," Miller said, looking at me with total respect. "I just wanted to say, my brother is in Cyber Command. He told me about the operation you ran last winter. The infrastructure defense. He turned to my father, thinking he was paying a compliment. Sir, you have no idea, Miller said. Your daughter is a legend in the intel community. Her team keeps half our national cyber infrastructure from collapsing. She's probably the smartest officer I've never met until today. A legend, smartest officer, keeps the infrastructure from collapsing. My father looked like he had been slapped. These were the words he had always wanted to hear about his children. He wanted a hero in the family. He wanted a winner. And he had won. He had won the whole time. He had just treated her like garbage. I didn't know, my father mumbled. He looked at the floor. Of course you didn't, I said. You were too busy toasting my ex-husband at his engagement party. He flinched. His head snapped up. Olivia, that was social, it was business. It was a choice, I cut him off. You chose him, you chose the lie, and now you have to live with the truth. I looked at the cousins. They were looking at their shoes. They were the ones who had gossiped about me. They were the ones who laughed at my downfall. Now, they couldn't even look me in the eye. My father tried to recover. He put on a shaky smile. He tried to pivot. Well, he said, his voice loud and fake. This is wonderful. My two girls, both serving their country. We have so much to celebrate. Olivia, this is amazing. I always knew you had it in you. The lie was so bold it almost made me laugh. Don't, I said, my voice was like ice. Don't you dare try to take credit for this. You didn't build this, Dad. You tried to destroy the person who built this. I'm your father, he pleaded. I pushed you. Maybe I was hard on you, but look at you now. It worked. It worked in spite of you, not because of you, I said. I built this to survive you. I looked at Sarah. Congratulations on private, Sarah, seriously. It's a good start. It was a devastating compliment, a good start. I was light years ahead of her and she knew it. The hierarchy had flipped. The golden child was now the grunt. The scapegoat was the commander. The air around us felt thin. My father looked desperate. He realized he was losing control. He realized he looked like a fool in front of the drill sergeant, in front of the crowd, in front of his new girlfriend. He tried one last manipulation. The family card. He reached out his hands, palms up. Olivia, please, he said. Let's not do this here. Let's go to dinner. I made reservations at the steakhouse. Big table, all of us. I'll buy the champagne. We can toast to. To both of you, we can fix this. We can be a family again. I looked at his hands. They were shaking slightly. I thought about the dinner. I imagined sitting there. I imagined him making a speech, telling everyone how proud he was of his major daughter. I imagined him posting a photo of us on Facebook to get likes, to show the world what a great dad he was. He wanted to consume my success. He wanted to eat it to feed his own ego. I looked him in the eye. I'm not hungry, I said. Olivia, don't be like this, he snapped. The anger was leaking back in. Don't turn your back on your family. I don't see a family here, I said, looking at the group. I see a fan club for whoever is winning at the moment, and I'm not renewing my membership. I turned to Drill Sergeant Miller. Carry on, Sergeant, I said. Yes, ma'am, he saluted again. I turned my back on them. Olivia, my father yelled. If you walk away now, don't expect a call. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. Olivia, Sarah cried out. Wait, I kept walking. My boots clicked on the polished floor. Click, click, click. I walked past the staring families. I walked past the balloons. I walked past the banners that said congratulations. I walked out of the double doors and into the gray afternoon. The wind hit my face. It was cold, but it felt clean. It felt like oxygen. I walked to the rental car. I picked up my coat from the passenger seat where I had thrown it. No, I realized I had left the coat on the floor of the auditorium. I smiled. I left it there. I didn't need to hide anymore. I got into the car. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment. My hands were on the steering wheel. They were steady as a rock. I looked in the rearview mirror. The doors of the auditorium were closed. No one had come running after me. My father was too proud to chase me. Sarah was too scared. Good, I started the engine. I put the car in drive. I felt a massive weight lift off my chest. It was the weight of their expectations. It was the weight of wanting them to love me. It was gone. I didn't get an apology. I didn't get a tearful confession. But I got something better. I got to see the look on their faces when they realized they had bet against the wrong horse. I got to see the truth hit them like a freight train. I drove toward the exit gate. I drove past the MP who had saluted me. He waved this time. I drove out onto the highway. I merged into traffic. I was just another car on the road, but inside I felt like I was flying. I was going home. Not to the house I grew up in, but to the life I built. To my quiet apartment, to my team, to my work. I was Major Olivia Carter, and I was free. That was the last time I saw them. It's been 6 months since the graduation. My father sends emails now. He sends me links to articles about the military. He tries to talk about strategy. He signs them, "Love, Dad." I archive them without reading. Sarah texts me on holidays. "Thinking of you," I don't reply. I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but it's family. You should forgive. You should make peace. But here is what I learned that day in the auditorium. Forgiveness is not the same as access. I forgive them for being weak. I forgive them for needing a scapegoat. I forgive them for not seeing me. But I will not give them access to me again. I will not let them into the fortress I built. They lost that privilege when they toasted the man who abused me. They lost that privilege when they decided I was a failure. Revenge isn't always about burning the house down. Revenge isn't always about screaming matches or lawsuits. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply success they never saw coming. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's walking away and never turning your head to look back. I found my peace in the silence. I found my worth in my own actions, not in their applause. Olivia leans forward, looking intensely into the camera lens. If you are watching this, and you are the black sheep of your family, if you are the one they whisper about, if you are the one they made into the villain just so they could feel like heroes, I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are just in the wrong environment. You can build your own life. You can write your own story. You can be the major of your own destiny. Don't wait for their apology. It's never coming. Just go out there and become so undeniable that they have to salute you, even if they hate it. She smiles, a genuine, warm smile. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And have you ever had to walk away from people you love to save yourself? I want to hear your story. And if you want more stories about finding power in the silence, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm Major Olivia Carter. Dismissed.